It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series, Illusionist Vision number 1 from 1978. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. This week, that's Illusionist's Vision, number 1, from 1978. Hope you enjoy the video. So welcome back. We're starting a new fanzine this time, and this is Illusionist's Vision, number 1. This is the size we're used to from the UK. It's a heavy stock cover, paper folded in half, with staples through it. It's from May or June of 1978. Mike Ferguson and Gavin Denton are responsible for this fanzine. And let's go take a look at the cover. Love this cover art. Let me blow it up for you. Michael Watts is the artist, the illustrator for all the art in this fanzine, and I'll show you the rest of it a little bit later. You got this Minotaur. There was a wizard in the background, right, conjuring up an earth elemental coming up out of the ground to do battle. I just really like the illustration style he's got here. So as I mentioned, this is obviously the first issue for this new fanzine. And so Mike has got an introduction. He talks about being in a different part of the country, so he's not as close to some of the larger cities, maybe where a lot of other players are and a lot of conventions might be taking place. So he talks about wanting to get some stuff going up in the area where he lives. He calls out specific thanks to Underworld Oracle, the Dungeoneer, and the White Dwarf magazine because of the work they've done and inspiring him to want to make his own fanzine. He said this is really going to be dependent on contributions from other people. There are a couple people who have contributions here, but of course it's his first effort, so we'll see if he can get some stuff going in future issues. He only does 3, so this one's not particularly long-lived. It's focused on Dungeons and Dragons, and you'll see that when we get in here and talk about the content. Okay, so taking a look at the contents for this time, we talked a little bit about the editorial. There's some fiction done by Mike Ferguson. It's a nice fantasy story about an evil mage who gets his comeuppance. The Mage's Sack, which are new magical items. The Malnebonean, which is a new character class, sort of an anti-paladin. Horlock's Hangout, which is a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. Monster March, which is new monsters. And then a survey and some competitions at the end. We'll talk a little bit about those as well. As I mentioned, Mike Ferguson and Gavin Denton are the ones who put this together. Michael Watts does all the art. And then these other 3 folks, Sposs Barrowcliff, Michael Hollingsworth, Brian Hinstock, I'll point out what they do when we get to the content that they provided. So the first thing we have is the Mage's Sack, which are new magical items. The Sword of Haste allows your fighter to cast a haste-like effect on himself. It lasts a number of rounds, strength plus constitution, 1 time per day, so it basically gives him 2 attacks. It doesn't give the negative effect of any type of an aging, so it's a pretty potent magic item, but of course it can only be used once a day. The Sword of Light or Darkness, lawful or chaotic in nature. These are intelligent swords. It says it's either like basically a shaft of brilliant bright light or complete darkness for chaos. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be that's the effect on the metal, or it literally doesn't even have a metal blade on it. It doesn't really say, but it does +4 to hit and double damage, which at this point in time is a D8 for the standard sword. Holy Sword of Healing, which is essentially just a +1 sword unless in the hands of a ranger or paladin, in which case it doubles the effect of any healing spells or the paladin's special healing ability. A Poison Dagger, typical +1, but in the hands of a thief or an assassin, a strike would deliver, in addition to the blade damage, some 46 of poison damage, up to 100 times. Probably that's a little too many. The Glass Dagger, +3, allows the holder to see things that are invisible, ethereal, etc. But it also is fragile, and so there's a chance on a successful hit it actually shatters and becomes ruined. Armor +3, but only versus enchanted monsters. I like this concept which is the armor's enchantment is against a particular type of foe. I think you could go all kinds of places with this idea. Otherwise, it's just maybe normal armor, which is the way they've drafted it. Could be maybe just +1, but then a special bonus against certain types of creatures, right? I really like that concept. Armor of speed basically is +2 armor, but it weighs nothing, so it gives you 0 effects on encumbrance, right? It doesn't actually haste you or speed you up, but the effect of not being encumbered could probably increase your movement rate. It's got a cursed version called Armor of Heaviness. Have to have a curse to remove it, and it's super heavy, so you're completely encumbered, maximum encumbered whenever you have it. And then finally, Armor of Levitation, which is also considered a cursed item, because once you put it on, you'll levitate 10 feet up in the air, and you'll stay levitated up. And other people are going to, I don't know, put a rope around you and drag you around or something, because you no longer can touch the ground. You're going to float from then on. It has some potential positive uses, but floating all the time is probably not what most people would like to do. The next thing we have is the new character class, the Malnebonean, which is obviously inspired by Horlock. It considers itself an anti-paladin, right? So it says the paladin is to lawful and good, what this guy is to chaotic evil. And like paladins, they can use sort of, the evil version of the holy blade, the unholy blade they call it, or an anti-vorpal blade. They don't have all of the benefits of the paladin class. In their case, I think this class is pretty well done. They give them spells, which are a blend of cleric spells, magic user spells, and new spells that they've made up, and they go into the explanation of those. And then they have, their experience tables and so forth, and basically say if they encounter paladins, they're going to be forced to challenge them. They give them a special ability to sort of call on the Lords of Chaos for assistance, and give them a pretty decent chance to have that be successful, starting at 5% but getting up to 50% by level 10. But say they will come to their aid to some extent, but then they will demand some type of a service in return for that aid. And gives you, if you're going to play this kind of character, it will give you lots of opportunities to give them, special quests or missions they had to do to fulfill that. So then we have Horlock's Hangout, which is the adventure. I think it's really well done. It's probably a couple of sessions at most. Yeah, probably a couple of sessions to play through with your party. A typical thing, we have the evil high priest was in the village. The villagers ran him off. He goes up into the forest, builds his stronghold. For a few years, they don't hear about him. Then people start disappearing. They finally realize, yep, it's the evil high priest who's grabbing people who wander into the forest. So they go in, they go after him and rout him. But then something mysterious is happening, because the people who were part of the party that was successful, one by one, disappear and die in mysterious circumstances until no one's left and no one remembers exactly where this place is. So it's been left alone for quite a long time, and that's where the party comes in, and they're going to go off and try and find this place, because no one ever got into the temple and no one ever found his supposed riches and treasure store. So that's supposed to still be there. I think the premise is pretty well done. A group of monsters have moved in, a humanoid race of monsters, hobgoblins, and others have moved in and sort of taken nest in this place, but not all of the secret entrances and hidden areas of the temple have been discovered, and so that remains potentially available for the party. Okay, so next we have the Monster March, new monsters. You know what I say, you can never have too many. The first one is called the Triffid, and it looks like a giant hydra-like creature with these tentacles. When they hit you, they can release a spore cloud of toxic poison. You suffer paralysis or become paralyzed, and then, as you might imagine, the tentacles drag you into the center of the plant creature to dissolve you. Then we have the Dream Plant, which live in shadows. They're dark, so you tend not to see them in places like dark forests or dungeons. They release a narcotic that causes delusion, and so you will start seeing illusions and not realize they're even there, and then they'll hit you with some type of a toxic thorn, and if you are succumb to this, they sort of wrap their leaves around you, pull you in, and try to essentially digest you. Then we have the Green Man, which is a semi-sentient algae creature. Doesn't do much damage from piercing weapons, fire and lightning don't do any damage. Part water apparently does all kinds of damage to it, and blunt weapons do damage. So just, a creature to put in a swamp area. We have an undead creature called the Phantom Serenader, and it is surrounded permanently by darkness, and basically tries to get you to come into the darkness where it has the advantage of attack over you. And obviously if you're in there in the dark, you can't see, you have a negative on your attack. Next we have a creature called the Vision, which is, they say, an illusionist would summon, like other magic users might summon, fire, earth elementals. This Vision creature causes illusions, and typical attack is to cause an illusion that makes the characters think they're aging. And every round or turn, they age another 10 years. And then the way they've got it drafted, if you fail certain saving throws, if you run away without defeating it, then the aging effects of the illusion become permanent effects on your character. If you defeat it or overcome, make your saving throw, then you realize that it's not real, and then you're going to be able to pretty easily dispatch this thing. It needs magical weapons, certain spells to affect it, but essentially once you know the illusion trick, you're going to be okay. They have something called an Ice Devil, which predates, I believe the Ice Devil shows up in the Fiend Folio in AD&D. This version is a small winged lizard that can polymorph itself into a white dragon, sleep spells, fear spells, can cast a cone of cold breath weapon, and do poison damage from its bite. So it's pretty ferocious. The Feroid looks like an iron golem, would probably scare your characters at low level. This one is essentially just an iron creature that has the effects of a very strong magnet. So it grabs people in plate mail armor or people's metal weapons and pulls it towards him. Still pretty tough, 20 hit points. I think maybe that's supposed to be hit dice, because they do say it's really hard, or maybe it's just because it's so hard to overcome the creature when it gets a hold of your armor. And then we have carrion dogs, which are white. They live subterranean without light, so they don't have any eyes. They move by sonar, but they're carrion dogs, and so they don't like to attack, although they will, but they mostly like to come up on people that are dead and eat them. They said they carry diseases. There's a chance they have rabies, so they might be foaming at the mouth, and if you get bitten, then you might get the disease or get the rabies, so that's the concept there. All right, let's look at the art. And again, all of this art is by the same illustrator, which is Michael Watts. And so here's his Balrog, and this guy's chopped somebody's head off. We got some trolls, and then a very good illustration, took up a full page in the fanzine here, of some type of insectoid creature that's coming to eat you. So that's it for Fanzine Friday, Illusionist Vision #1 from 1978. I think another fantastic fanzine, a pretty rare one to find, so I'm really glad that I've got all three of these in my collection, and we'll be taking a look at the rest of those in the weeks ahead. Until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.